What is up, ProGuides family, and welcome back to another upcoming changes video. I don't know about you guys, but I am praying to the heavens that they nerf Wukong. So these are some much needed balance changes, but remember though, these changes are still tentative. They could always get pulled last minute, but they'll likely make it to the patch. So what exactly is happening next patch? Well, we'll find out in a short second. First off, let me ask my question of the day. What makes League so fun for you? I know I'm going to see a lot of troll responses in the comment section, but to be honest, for me, I just love how competitive it is, and I love seeing how the game evolves. I love balance changes. I like that every meta is different than the next, and that unlike a lot of other competitive games, there is an option for boomers to actually be good in the game, and I don't need to rely too much on my mechanics to actually be that good. Because to be honest, I was pretty good at Counter-Strike, and now, with my boomer reflexes, I can barely play Valorant. It's pretty sad, actually. Speaking of Valorant, if you guys are getting into that, go sub to our Valorant channel. It's popping off right now. It's pretty helpful. And also, I've been playing a lot of TFT recently. If you guys are into TFT, go sub to our channel there as well. I absolutely love it. We offer TFT coaching on ProGuides now as well. Super good time to get into TFT. Alright, so first up, let's go through my favorite section, the skins. Let's rewind back to last year where Fun Plus Phoenix took home the Summoners Cup from Worlds 2019. To commemorate their victory, their champion skins will be released. We have FPX Gangplank, Lee Sin, Malphite, Thresh, and Vayne. They look pretty nice, and if you play any of these champions, definitely consider throwing some RP down to purchase them. We also have a plethora of various summoner icons and emotes entering the shop. There are a ton, so make sure to check those out next patch. Next up, we're going to run you guys through those much needed balance changes. So like we said in our patch preview video, they will be making a change to Sanguine Blade. Sanguine Blade will now have its cost reduced by 100 and its attack damage increased by 5. Upon release, this item was absolutely broken and required some immediate nerfs to balance it. They might have overshot the nerfs as this item has not been very popular as of late. A reduction in cost, in my opinion, is the bigger part of this buff, but honestly, who doesn't appreciate 5 more AD? 100 gold is essentially one minion wave, which means you basically hit the item 30 seconds earlier. As Sanguine Blade is an incredibly powerful power spike, getting it earlier in the game is pretty big, and the fact that it's a bit stronger now is the icing on top. It's definitely possible that more top laners begin picking this up as a potential answer to Blade of the Ruined King, trading the reliability of Bork for more raw skirmishing power. Currently, Blade of the Ruined King seems like the strongest, most reliable purchase for split pushers, so this buff should hopefully incentivize more players to pick up Sanguine Blade in place of it. Alright guys, now let's talk about the top lane. Woo! Thank God, guys, they are actually going to be nerfing Wukong. He has been way too strong across basically every level of play. Currently, it's looking like Wukong's armor will be reduced from 34 to 31, his Q damage from 30 to 130 to 20 to 120, and his clone's damage from 40 to 60% to 35 to 55%. He's getting hit basically everywhere. His initial tankiness has taken a small hit, and he's lost some damage at all points in the game. Wukong has been too reliable of a threat in the top lane, and these nerfs should create an opportunity for other top laners to stand up and challenge him. Aside from this nerf, we are also seeing some champions receiving buffs, and Quinn is one of them. Her Q's near sight duration is going up from 1.5 seconds to 1.75 seconds. While I'm uncertain whether or not this buff is necessary, it should give Quinn a little push to hopefully boost her play rate. Currently, her play rate is extremely low. Who's Quinn again? And putting any buff, no matter how small, on that patch notes page should hopefully remind players that she's a champion that can actually play this game. Quinn's Q is already a troublesome ability to play against, and this buff should make Quinn stronger during the laning phase, especially because of how annoying her Q is. Not a bad buff by Riot, as her damage remains unchanged. The reasoning behind this is that Quinn is actually expected to benefit from the Sanguine Blade buffs, so we'll have to wait and see how strong she ends up becoming. Another champion receiving a buff is Gnar. It looks like Gnar has been unable to claw back into the meta. Mega Gnar's Q refund is going up 60% to 70%, and Mega Gnar's E damage is going up from 50 to 190 to 80 to 220 damage. Gnar's E is an ability players have to use carefully. By buffing the damage on it significantly, players will now be rewarded much more heavily for committing to fights, giving up their escape tool for a sizable amount of damage. This also incentivizes players to actually land their E on opponents rather than using it as an ability to exclusively close the distance. Rather than pushing Gnar into a kite-happy, stay away from the enemy type character, Riot is trying to reward Gnar players for going in and getting their hands dirty. Next up is ChoGath, who is also receiving a minor buff. ChoGath's E damage is going up from 22 to 70 to 22 to 84. This is a buff at all stages of the game, aside from when his E only has 1 point in it. This is basically a top ChoGath buff only in the early to mid game, as AP ChoGath players will max Q and W for the burst damage instead. ChoGath is supposed to be a late game monster, and he just hasn't been able to consistently carry games lately. These buffs should really help him dish out more damage in those later fights. His E damage going up by 12 means that it's actually going up by 36 if he's able to utilize all the empowered basic attacks from a single cast. Alright guys, that's it for the top lane. Let's head into the jungle. Surprise, surprise, Kane needs a buff. His Q's cooldown is going down from 7 to 5 seconds to 6 to 4 seconds. On top of this, his Q's bonus damage will now apply to minions, and his W's slow is going up from 70% to 90% that decays. If you guys couldn't see these obvious hints, these are massive buffs. Kane's Q is his bread and butter, and both of his transformations are going to be so much more powerful because of it. Not only does a lowered cooldown on his Q increase Kane's damage output, it also increases his mobility, and in his red form, his durability as well. To be honest, I think buffing the Q alone is huge, and the other changes are nice, but don't really change that much. The fact that Kane's Q will now deal bonus damage to minions means that we might actually see solo lane Kane become a new thing. This is also a jungle buff because after a successful gank, you typically want to help your laners push their lanes in. It's also a great help for when you have champions who struggle to wave clear early on. When a laner needs help resetting their lane, Kane can now duo that lane with teammates for a little instant push to help that wave reset, and that's going to be really powerful. I personally think that these buffs should be pretty big, but we'll wait and see for our tier list to see where we put him. Let's talk about Karthus. Karthus is having his base movement speed reduced from 335 to 325. He already has an incredible clear speed, and he's a ranged champion, so he's able to manipulate jungle creeps to come to him rather than needing to walk to them himself. His early clear speed is going to remain practically unchanged, however this nerf is going to hurt him a lot more in other aspects of his gameplay. Less movement speed means that it'll be harder for Karthus to gank, chase, and most importantly, run away from his opponents. Unfortunately, not every fight is winnable, even if you're Karthus, who can continuously throw some deadly skittles at his foes following his death. This nerf should create some more windows of counterplay and make Karthus a little more fragile than he already is. Trundle is also due for some nerfs. He's been a very strong answer to tanks and a great duelist altogether. His ult is receiving a nerf, having its cooldown increase from 100 to 60 to 120 to 80. Honestly, this one's gonna hurt a lot, because Trundle doesn't typically build cooldown reduction as a jungler. Slapping on 20 more seconds to that ultimate is significant because it's Trundle's get out of jail free card in so many cases. If he gets caught out by an enemy Maokai, for example, he just presses R on the Maokai and says, "Me tank," and trots away like the troll he is. You'll be able to catch Trundle with his pants down much more often now. Ugh. Oh god, that's a gross image. You'll be able to punish him, and that's kind of gross too. Well, either way, it's going to be easier to kill him, and it's going to be harder to play him. Especially in the late game, this is going to be a huge nerf because Trundle might not have his ultimate for every single team fight, if not enough time has passed. With a 60-second cooldown, he basically always has it. Even if he dies, by the time he spawns and another fight breaks out, it would almost be available. Slapping on 20 more seconds to that changes up strategies quite a bit. Another Lissandra buff, guys. One more. Riot really wants to bring her back, and I might be okay with that. Let me know what you guys think down below. Her Q's cooldown is being decreased in the early game. Instead of 10 to 4 seconds, it'll now be 8 to 4 seconds. Reducing her Q's cooldown by 2 seconds in the early game should restore some of Lissandra's wave clear and also allow her to trade against her foes much more effectively. This buff is really big because it's a partial revert to the nerfs that absolutely gutted her last season. While 8 seconds still is pretty long, it's a whole lot better than having to wait 10 seconds to use your main ability. Lissandra needs wave clear, her playstyle revolves around it, so this should be a very big buff for her. She really is a champion who likes to roam and support her teammates through ganks and skirmishes. If she's not being able to do that, she basically doesn't come online. So giving Lissandra some early wave clear should put her back in a much better spot. Alright, that's pretty much all that's covered in the mid lane, and we have no bottom lane changes planned for now, so let's head on to supports. Okay, let's start with the bad news first. Well, actually, it might be good news for some of you guys because they are nerfs. And first, it's Bard. While his play rates haven't been as dominant as other S-tier picks like Leona or Thresh, Bard has been absolutely incredible for a while now. Riot wants to tone down the influence Bard has over games, so they've decided to hit his utility rather than his damage. And if you're gonna nerf him, that's probably gonna be the most effective thing to nerf. His W's movement speed bonus is going down from 50% to 30%. His W's cooldown is also being increased from 12 to 14 seconds. Finally, his E's cooldown is going up from 18 to 14 to 22 to 16. Like we said, his utility has taken a big hit. Bard players will now have to be more conscious of how they use their portals, because the cooldown has been increased by a whopping 4 seconds early on. The nerfs to Bard's W are pretty big, but they're going to hurt his roaming power more than his sustain. Honestly, when I see Bards, I don't really think of sustain anyway. He'd probably want to save his mana for his Q regardless. Ultimately, Bard will probably still be a very powerful laner, but these nerfs should weaken his roams and his late game utility. Nami is another champion getting nerfed. She has been classified as way too strong for average players. Her win rates have actually been extremely high across all elos, so I think she's due for some nerfs regardless. Nami's base HP is being reduced from 489 to 475. Her base mana from 277 to 265. Her passive's movement speed bonus from 60 to 45, and these are some pretty substantial nerfs. Nami should be a little bit squishier as a result, and also be less oppressive as a result of these nerfs to her passive and base mana. Having 15 less movement speed might not seem like much, but early on when players don't have boots, it's a pretty big deal. Fortunately for Nami players, her damage and sustain aren't being touched, but at the end of the day, these nerfs are still going to take a toll on Nami's win rate. Finally, Fiddlesticks is receiving a buff targeted at his role as a support specifically. The change to his E was definitely a nerf to support Fiddlesticks following his rework, as opposed to the annoying point-and-click bounce crow that made you want to pull your hair out. It's now a single cast burst spell. This has made support Fiddlesticks feel a bit underwhelming, and Riot has decided to buff him once again. Fiddlesticks' E damage is being increased from 70 to 190 to 70 to 210. This should hopefully incentivize players to continue maxing his E and trying to slowly whittle down their opponents with it. Alright guys, that's going to wrap up our upcoming changes for patch 10.9. Thank you guys so much for watching and joining me today. Once again, if you guys want to get better at League of Legends or any other esports game that you're enjoying right now, go to ProGuides.com and find a pro coach right now. And if you guys are interested in any of our other games like Smash Bros, Valorant, Fortnite, or TFT, go follow our channels. We produce a bunch of awesome content to help you guys out with those as well. Alright guys, that's it for me here. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope that everything is going great with you guys in your lives right now. And even though we're stuck at home, there's still ways to improve in life and in our games that we love. Alright, that's it for me today. Thank you so much for watching. Good luck your next few games, and I'll see you on the Rift.